twin dams. I highly doubt there's going to be any leopard lurking here. We'll probably find a situation that there's not much going on. These guys seem really relaxed. But actually, there's a leopard, as I say it right now. It's just that's just ridiculous. Well done, VM, well spotted. So that was going to happen, and maybe just this noise of the car has triggered this leopard to come. See, looks like, oh boy, is it one of our person? Spot, hello boy, sorry, was I talking too loud? Did I give you a fright? I'm sorry. So he's gotten a little fright when I started talking. We've been sitting so nice and quietly watching him as he's been watching the guinea fowl running around all over the place here, and he's found himself a little bit of shade, which is the perfect spot to rest on a hot afternoon like this. He's got a nice shady area. There's lots of prey animals that potentially will come down and drink, so you'll find as it starts to cool off, things like impala, things like nyala, they're going to come and drink here, and it is the prime place for a young leopard to be able to hone his skills in hunting. And we've already seen Hosana twice hunting from these water holes and trying to make use of places like treehouse and twin dams to be able to stalk prey items that come for water in hot weather. So hopefully that will be this afternoon. We're going to be very patient and sit with him, even though he might be quite restful during the afternoon and he probably might sleep a little bit. You can see he's hot, he's panting, and I'm not surprised. He's got a little bit of a belly on him, and he has been walking. We've obviously found him and he was walking in this direction. Oh, nice big yawn. Hello, boy. And he's got a nice full belly, which means that I'm pretty sure he's hot. He's built up a lot of residual heat by spending time walking in this hot sunshine, and so I think he's going to be resting here probably for quite some time. Unless something comes along that he wants to potentially stalk, so something like these guinea fowl that we saw earlier, they might be that the situation where he gets up and looks at them and tries to go after them, although most of them have drifted off now and he's still kind of non-plussed by it and he's still lying in the shade. Now I believe lots of you are super excited to see Hosana. Well, so am I. I've had not the best of days today. It's been a bit of an average day, and I was having a bit of a bad afternoon when the petrol spilled all over me, and I was thinking to myself, well, hopefully the bush will give us something to cheer us up, and you cannot get any more cheerful than a beautiful male leopard walking around in the afternoon as you come towards one of the more scenic spots in the reserve down towards the Mulawati and Twin Dam. So super excited that we managed to find him and managed to get him on camera, and that we're going to be able to spend the whole afternoon with him. The exciting thing is that he came around, he seems to be watching, so it seems to be a little bit on the restless side. And where are you going, Hosana? It's very hot. Maybe that's where he's deciding that he's going to lie. There was a branch right in his face, and so that's a little bit of a better position. You can see his little tongue is out, and that's all just to try and help him with cooling down a little bit. When the tongue is out like that and mouth is open, basically what's happening is there's a huge amount of evaporation that's taking place off the tongue. So as he's breathing, he's getting rid of moisture that's evaporating, and that causes a cooling effect on the blood, and that cooler blood then goes back into the body, and it just helps control his temperature. Remember, they can't sweat like us, and they also are covered in a fur coat. Now, if I was Hosana and I was covered in a fur coat this afternoon, I can tell you that I would be highly uncomfortable, and so it's no surprise that there is a little bit of a tongue hanging out and a little bit of a situation where he's panting and trying to just keep himself nice and cool. But isn't he just growing up into such a beautiful individual? Earlier when we saw him at first, he's starting to develop a bit of a dewlap. If you look at him now, you can actually see that neck is starting to get that typical male shape where it pretty much just goes straight up. There's not really much of a chin, so he's really developing in that regard. And because he's full-bellied, it's just making it that much better when we're seeing him. He's looking that much bigger and that much stronger and that much sort of more impressive. And the more I see Hosana, the more he's kind of growing on me, and the more he's developing into an incredible specimen, and one that hopefully will spend a lot more time around this area. Now, I know he is going to be sleepy. I know he's going to probably spend most of his afternoon in this position, but like I say, it's going to be worth being patient here. We know from previous experience that there are animals that drink at Twin Dams. It is a place that he likes to stalk animals from, and so for us, it's going to be worth sitting and waiting. We might end up with something really quite special if we do sit and wait here, and well, why would you want to go anywhere else at the end of the day, other than the fact that it's quite hot in the sun? It's still beautiful to be here. There's lots of birds that are going to call, and who knows what else is going to arrive at the dam as we continue our afternoon here at Twin Dams. But he seems to have settled down now. Most of the guinea fowl, like I say, have moved off. They're not making near as much noise as what they were earlier. Terry, you want to know how long leopards usually live for? Well, it depends. Male and females tend to live slightly different lengths of time. On average, in areas like this where there's a very high density of leopard, we find a situation where the male leopards normally live to about 12 to 14 years. Now, the reason why the males only live that long is because their life is very rough. They've got to go nomadic from their mom and find their own territory, which means they've got to cross multiple big males' paths and try and get away from those, as well as all kinds of other territory of their own. Once they've done that, they've then got to defend it to other rival males and nomadic males that might come in. And then later in life, when they reach that sort of 12, 13, 14 years, there's younger individuals that start to push in, these young, well-developed, big young individuals that are full of spirit. They come in and they then want to start pushing those older males. And so you get a situation where those males will then push in and those older ones get killed. So they tend to be a little bit shorter. Females a little bit longer because they're not having to defend territory as much and try and force themselves to get an area. They're normally given a little section of their mom's territory to survive in. You end up with a situation where they normally go between sort of 14 and 16 years old. That's not always the case though. We do see female leopards dying earlier than that, and we do see male leopards living longer than 14, but it's on average 12 to 14 for males, 14 to 16 for the females is typical for this area. If you go to places where there's a little bit less of a density, you might find that the males will live slightly longer and the females slightly longer, although here in the Sabi Sands, there's two of the oldest females that I've ever heard of in the wild have been seen. So there was one female that got to 20 and another one that got to 19 and a half, which is incredibly old, even in a zoo environment or a captive environment. And so those two really did an amazing job to get to that age. I didn't do it. You're asking what a dewlap is, or explain what a dewlap is. Well, a dewlap here in South Africa is what we refer to the big fold of skin that runs underneath the chin of an animal. So buffalo males get it, big male leopards get it. You'll see it in even eland up in the Masai Mara. They get this fold of skin that starts to hang from the chin down towards the chest. And the older they get, the more that skin starts to hang. And it's almost like a way of showing females and that they are big dominant individuals, and it's known as a dewlap. You also get it in cows, funny enough, too. So it's more just a signal to other individuals within that species that this is an older, more dominant individual and one that's in the prime of his life. When they get these big dewlaps, it serves to just make them appear larger, make them appear more sort of hostile, more, I suppose, brazen towards any other males, and then are more attractive to the females. So it's just, that's why they have it. There's no other physiological reason for it. I suppose it does help to protect a little bit in leopards. It will protect their necks if they're fighting with other males. It's a lot of loose skin, and so that male might bite towards that skin and not get hurt there. So it just depends on them. But in things like buffalo and eland, not so much. It's not really there to design to protect them from the jaws of another eland or buffalo. It's more just to show dominance towards females. But I think little Hosana is about to take a very, very long nap. Although there is another vehicle that is going to come join us at some stage, that would probably mean that he might just see him popping up his head every now and then. There's also a beautiful breeze that's just kicked up now. It's a nice cool breeze that's blowing, and it's coming straight towards us. So you might find every now and then he'll pick up a scent in that breeze or hear something, and he'll pop his head up and just scan around just to see what's going on. And so we might see a lot of sleeping for now, but as that sun starts to set, I'm pretty sure we might get some action. Now we're going to, like I say, be patient with Hosana. I'm pretty sure at some point he is going to get up and he is going to move and potentially even maybe hunt around this waterhole. And while we do that, I believe Taylor McCurdy has had some luck of her own and has found a sleepy cat too. Has just arrived back, and Hosana has just woken up, and they're not very far at all. They're all one by one filing down towards the water for a little drink, and their kind of attention is going to be so focused on drinking water and avoiding crocodiles and various other things. You can see there they are coming down to drink, and I wonder if little Hosana might decide to try and stalk in behind them. He's definitely adjusted his position. He was fast asleep, and he rolled over and his one eye opened, and he noticed these guinea fowl coming past, and he changed position a little bit, and you can see he's shoved himself into that bush a little bit more, just in order to be able to camouflage a bit better. And you can see him watching these guinea fowl, just trying to work out where exactly he can position himself in order to hunt them. All the guinea fowl are slowly but surely making their way to water, and why not? It's a hot afternoon, and so you would imagine that these guys would love a bit of a drink of water. So there's some of them on the bank itself, and then the rest of them you can see are all lined up there. So I wonder if he's not going to wait for the rest of that flock to come down towards the water source itself, and then he can try and stalk on this bank and try and get down to them. Although I think these guinea fowl, there's enough of them to be able to spot Hosana in an open section like this. At the end of the day, it is very open here. There's not too much cover for this little male leopard to be able to stalk towards those guinea fowls. So I think he's unfortunately just going to have to sit tight and just be happy with staring at us. Look at that, isn't he beautiful? His eyes seem to be changing colour. Instead of getting lighter, they seem to be almost getting darker. Beautiful. So Tula Ann, who's 5 years old. Hello Tula Ann, long time no here, and I hope that you're having a wonderful day. You always want to know, Hosana is getting so big. Is it because he's taking everybody else's food? Well, Tula Ann, it seems that way. Hosana seems to be stealing everyone's food. We've seen him stealing Shadow's food, we've seen him stealing Tandi's food. He's even stolen a little bit of Tingana's food. So get to the age where male leopards grow like still around this area, and his mom was still alive, that he would have to start going on his own, and that means they've got to grow quickly so that they can basically find their own territory and defend themselves against other male leopards. But him finding nutrients from other leopards is definitely helping in him growing and getting bigger. He's being a little bit of a piggy, isn't he? But that's okay, we'll give it to him. If he's able to do it, then why not? At the end of the day, we're rooting for our young man. He had a tough sort of start to life with his mom disappearing, and so if he takes a few males from his older sisters and from his father, well, that's okay. We'll have to give it to him and let him have it. It's all in the name of him surviving and continuing the bloodline. And at the end of the day, it's also been all completely non-sort of aggressive interaction, so they haven't fought at all the times that he's gone after food items from other leopards. He hasn't fought with them, so that's okay. As long as there's no aggression, then everything is fine. Oh, there we go. He's decided no guinea fowl. Tristan would rather go for a sundowner hunt, I would imagine. It really is starting to get blazingly hot. The sun is at an angle now where it's hitting us pretty much square on, and it's feeling very warm. And so he's positioned himself in the perfect place. There you can see Viam just showing you where that sun is coming from. So we're getting blasted by the sun, and Viam has made himself a nice contraption, because when it's very bright, to actually find Hosana in his screenshot. So I'm going to take a little photo of VM, and then I'm going to ask VM to show my photo to all of you. Just hold on, VM. Pose nicely. Smile, VM. There we go. So this is what VM looks like at the back of the vehicle. He's throwing a little Mara flare into our footage this afternoon from the Sabi sand. So he's got himself a little sugar over the top of his head and over the top of the camera, and there's a little toothy grin from behind the shuka as Veer tries to hide away from this horrible sun. Very nice, Vildi. You look very good. I'm quite impressed with your contraption, and apparently it works a lot better. Vildi, is it much better?
It's cooler as well.
It's cooler as well, and it's much better apparently. Well done, VM. So VM's really made himself the best possible solution, and he's incorporated both of our locations into one this afternoon. Hosana doesn't seem to be too fussed by it. Maybe he's a bit jealous of your shuka, VM. You might have to leave it with Hosana. I would imagine Hosana would be one of those cats that would look quite good in a shuka. Imagine it's kind of strapped around his neck almost as like a little scarf kind of thing that you see dogs sometimes wearing. I think he'd look quite spiffy.
Red is not his colour, he's colourblind.
Is red not his colour? Sorry, VM, I forgot he's colourblind, so red is not his colour, not contrasty enough. You'd have to get... What colour do you think he would like, VM?
That's a blue one.
A blue one. Blue one with red, or blue just on its own? Blue one with red. Okay, so blue and red is what we're going to go for Hosana. Apparently that's what he's going to be into if he had to have a shuka. But it amazes me how cats go from sleepy, tired individuals to awake, then back to sleep again. So Philip, this is obviously it's a difficult question to answer. It's almost as though it's almost like a how long is a piece of string question. I mean, Tingana theoretically should be starting to get a little bit on the kind of antsy side of having Hosana around. Hosana is starting to get big. He's starting to look quite imposing. He's roaming in the heart of Tingana's territory at the moment, and so I don't think it's too much longer until this sort of relaxed attitude that Tingana's got with the young boys changes and he starts to get a little bit more grumpy about it. I think at the moment Hosana's also being very clever. He's very submissive every time he's around Tingana. He seems to roll onto his back and kind of just make himself a lot smaller, and he's not really challenging in any way. He's not scent marking, he's not calling, which means that Tingana almost is still seeing him as a young individual, but he's starting to grow and get bigger, and that means that even his behavior is not going to belie his size. And as soon as Tingana realizes that this boy is too big, he's going to start pushing him out and start getting him into a situation where I think we're going to see less and less of Hosana as he gets bigger and bigger. The strange thing is, though, I really thought that by now already we would have seen Hosana being far more nomadic than what we've seen. In fact, he's really stayed on Djuma and in the heart of his mom's territory and been probably our most viewed leopard. And in fact, I would actually love to know who we've seen the most over the last 6 months, but I would hazard a guess that Hosana must be easily double, I would say, all the rest of the leopards that we've had in this area in terms of frequency of sightings in that area. And so I really hope that it's still a while longer until Tingana kicks him out, or Tamba for that matter. And if these boys can somehow manage to escape Tingana's stick around for another year, who knows where Tingana will be in a year and who knows what will happen. So that's what I'm hoping for, in a way, is that one of these two boys ends up being the dominant male on Djuma over the next couple of years. Again, much like what Quarantines did a little bit to our east, is maybe one of these two will be able to then forge a territory either south of us on Little Gari area or to the north of us towards Buffelshoek. So that's what I'm hoping. Of course, it's a big hope and it's a lot to ask because Tingana is still looking absolutely beautiful and seems to just not be aging at all. If you think that he's a very similar age to Mvula and you look at the two cats, Tingana seems to be in a lot better condition than what Mvula does. And so who knows? I mean, maybe Tingana is going to be one of those leopards that lives for a long time, like the Campan male of Londolozi that went, I think he was about 16 when he died, or 15 and a half, somewhere around there, which is very old for a male leopard. So it'll be interesting. Karen, so with Hosana and his pink little nose, you're wondering, is that nose going to get darker or is it going to stay pink? Well, the thing is that there's a bit of a fallacy in that people think that the nose color can determine age. It's not really true. If you look at Shadow, she's got a very pink nose, and even Tundi has got quite a bit of pink in that nose as well. It's not quite as much as Shadow, but both of them do display some forms of pink in the nose itself, and those two individuals are 11 years old. So I think his nose will darken a little bit, but you never know. It might keep a little bit of that pinkness. He doesn't have quite as pink a nose as what you see on Tamba. Tamba's nose is bright pink, and I actually think Tamba might keep a fairly pink nose for quite a long time, whereas Hosana seems to be darkening already, and I think potentially he might end up with a darker, blacker nose by the time he gets to a dominant individual, but for now, still quite pink, and it'll be interesting to see. It's obviously a genetic thing as well, and some male leopards will end up with lightish coloured nose and others with much dark. We'll see. At this stage, it's still very pink, and hopefully it does stay like that. It almost adds to his character, and it kind of makes his eyes just pop out a little bit more than the sort of darker nose would. But you can see he's absolutely unperturbed by vehicles. He really doesn't mind. It's almost as though he's quite happy and quite sort of comfortable around vehicles. I wonder if maybe the time that's been spent with him as a young individual, he's almost associated vehicles as a sort of comfort area, and that there is no real negative thing about it. And for a male leopard to not even wake up for when one vehicle left going on around him, but he's completely at ease with our presence. And I was very surprised yesterday, actually, when Taylor had that male leopard. Absolutely beautiful male leopard, and I'm sure Taylor was doing flick-flacks over the moon, excited when she saw that male. It was really very cool. Now, I do apologize that there is a little bit of picture breakup, so what we're going to do is just try and reposition ourselves slightly so that we can try and get worlds. It's all very stationary and very static and sleepy, and Hosana's being as cute could be with the way that he's lying. He's almost got his kind of head tucked out or underneath him, and he's just sort of taking it very easy. And we see him lying like this quite... So every time we've seen him where he's been, particularly around the ear areas, see him kind of tucking his head down like that, and those ears almost get squashed up, and that means that things don't go in. So obviously it exposes one ear, but I think it's something to do with that, because I've always noticed it when the flies have been excessively bad that he ends up doing that. And I'm actually surprised that there's not more flies on him on a day like today. When it's hot like this, you often find flies will congregate quite heavily around a leopard or a cat's face, and the reason why, even the eyes, especially when it's very bright, there's a little bit of kind of moisture that gets onto the eye area, and they go and then sequester that moisture from there. So I'm surprised he doesn't have more of them, and given also the close proximity. Oh, are you dreaming, boy? Look at that. How cool is that? What do you think he's dreaming of, Wildy? Steak? Impala? I think...
Financial collapse.
Financial collapse, you reckon? Maybe that's what he's dreaming of. So he seems like a serious fella, so maybe he's at university now and financial collapse is what's weighing on his mind. You can always trust for him to come up with the quite dry sense of humour, and I always enjoy it, I must be honest. So Riti, no, I haven't seen Hosana marking his territory. He tends to just kind of move around and he'll urinate, but he won't scrape his back legs. He's also not rubbing his face on trees yet and kind of getting to a situation where he's actually really marking. Also, we haven't heard him calling at all. So I think he knows that he needs to be still a little quiet and a little bit on the sort of on the side of caution in the fact that he needs to be quiet and needs to move around here as stealthily as possible. As soon as he starts to send mark, as soon as he starts to vocalize, Tingana's going to be on him like a flash and not tolerate him anymore at all, because he then turns from offspring of Tingana that's under the protection of this area and effectively under the protection of Tingana. He then becomes a threat because he's starting to then attract attention of females, because a female that's in heat picks up the scent of a male, or hears a male calling, she's going to head in that direction, and you're going to get a situation where this young male leopard potentially could steal mating rights away from his father. And so that's when Tingana is going to say, no, we're not going to have any of it, and probably push him away. Although we do get situations where there's a bit of an anomaly, and one is actually happening right now down in the south of the Sabi Sands, where there is a young male called the White Dam young male, and I know some of you really do like him. He's a beautiful individual, and I've seen his mother a few times, and unfortunately I think she's passed away now, but he seems to have found a way of sticking around and mating with females, even though there is the presence of big dominant males. I think at the moment he's about 3.5 years old. I might be a little bit wrong, but somewhere around there, which is very young for a male leopard to be mating. And he's even been seen mating in the presence of another big male who then mated with the same female at the same sighting. And so for somehow, I don't know how it is, he's managed to kind of fend off the males in that area and assert himself, even though he's this young individual. He might actually even be younger. I think he might even be 2.5 or 3, somewhere there. And I know Taylor knows him. Taylor saw him when he was a cub, when she was still down in the south of the reserve. But absolutely phenomenal to see a young leopard like that asserting himself. So, James, you're wondering how old is the oldest dominant male leopard I've seen hold a territory? Well, James, I'm just trying to think back of all the males, and I suppose probably Campan was maybe the oldest. I mean, he was, like I say, I think he was almost 16 when he eventually died, and he was still clinging on to territory. I'm just trying to think who else held territories for really long periods of time that I've seen. It's difficult. You know, at the end of the day, Tyson, he moved away from this area. Mofufanyan, I suppose, also died at around a sort of older age if you look at the lifespans of leopards. I mean, Mvula is still around and is aging, so is Tingana, but these individuals, you know, Mvula Willa's case, has become nomadic. Kashan male has become nomadic. Sand River male became nomadic. So it's difficult to say kind of in terms of actually held territory. I'd say Campan is probably the oldest individual that I've seen hold a territory. And like I say, he was about 15, 16 when he started to kind of go nomadic, and he then shortly after that passed away. But he still held kind of part of his territory all the way into that age. It's absolutely phenomenal for a male leopard. It's really very old. Like I said, we're sitting here talking about 12-year-old males. For a male to live a further 3 years and still keep that territory is absolutely unbelievable. So he was an incredible cat and an absolutely massive individual, and one that was quite something to see. I remember the first time I saw Campan, it was kind of a bit of a legend in the area of the Central Sabi Sands, and everyone always used to comment on how big Campan male was, and he was an individual that really was impressive, and he had a certain aura about him that really kind of took your breath away. So magnificent animal. And I remember seeing photos of, I think when he was about 2.5 years old, which is not very old for a male leopard, and it might have even been a bit younger, and he had killed a fully grown female wildebeest, which was quite something at that age. So Jackson, who is 5 years old, hello Jackson, and Jackson wants to know, do leopards purr and knead the ground like house cats? And so do they use their little claws to kind of pull up on the ground and sort of flex their claws into the ground? Well, in terms of the kneading of the ground, they don't do it all the time, but every now and then you'll see they'll stretch their paws a little bit on the ground itself, and they'll kind of stretch them out, but they don't actually knead the ground, so they won't pull up with their paws and cause too much sort of damage to the soil. You'll find they sharpen their claws against some trees sometimes, which is quite similar to what the cats do on cushions and various other things when they knead. So they do that, but they don't do it nearly as much as what a domestic cat would do. In terms of purring, no, they don't purr. These cats are only capable of roaring, so they're not like our domestic cats, Jackson. Unfortunately, they don't purr at all, but they do make a very cool sound, and it's called a chuff. And so when they are young animals or when they're moms and they want to try and call their babies, then they'll make what's called a chuffing sound, and the chuffing sound goes like this. It goes a little bit like and that's how a leopard will talk to each other. So they make quite a cute sound. It's not a purr, but we call it a chuff, and I suppose it could be the equivalent of a purr in little cats and domestic cats that we see. So, but look at that. It's still tucked away, and you can see, even though we've had 2 cars come through, it's still a little bit sleepy. Oh, there we go. Good afternoon, Hosana. It is starting to cool down really nicely now. The breeze is still blowing. The sun is starting to get down. It doesn't have that same venom in it at the moment. And I think that we're going to see a situation where Hosana maybe is going to sleep, I would say, for about another, I'm going to call it, at 45 minutes, we're going to see him starting to wake up and starting to kind of groom himself. And from there, hopefully, some sort of prey animal comes. I'm really hoping that we see something like impalas coming down to drink, or maybe some baby nyala or something in that sort of size range that starts to come down, because that will definitely pique Hosana's interest, and maybe, just maybe, he'll be in a hunt for us and we'll be able to see something really epic from him again. I've had one of my favorite Hosana sightings. In fact, my favorite Hosana sighting, both of them have been here at Twin Dams. One was with Tumba when they had that altercation and that sort of young male interaction. It was absolutely phenomenal to watch and super intriguing. And the other was when he then stalked impalas on the dam wall, where he just lay in plain sight and these impalas filed past him. It was such an epic way to watch a leopard go about its business. We had him leopard crawling towards us, low to the ground, stalking, and I was shocked at how well he camouflaged, even though he was right out in the open. And so I'm hoping this afternoon we're going to get a situation where we're going to see some of the same that we saw that day when the impalas came to drink. It's certainly the right conditions for it, and we're certainly in the right place for him to be able to do that. And so that's why I say exercising a little bit of patience is worth it. But look at the size of that paw in relation to that head. Hosana, are you doing your cutest impressions that you can today? You can see 1 or 2 little flies buzzing around that we were talking about earlier. That's maybe why he was just wiping his face with his paw. Maybe there was a fly that was in the corner of his eye and he was just wiping away at that. Now, Stacey, you're wondering if they shed their fur. Well, the thing is with cats, and if you've ever had a domestic cat, you'll know that their fur does come out quite a bit, and so there's constant replacement of fur and hair growing, and there will be things that will pull at it as they walk around, particularly because a leopard spends a lot of its time in thick, dense areas. If they didn't actually regrow hair and the hair didn't carry on growing, you'd have a situation where they would have no hair whatsoever, because it would all be pulled out by the thorn trees and various other things that they actually walk through. And if you find where they've climbed trees, a lot of the time you can actually see little sort of hairs from a leopard actually stuck sometimes in certain places, particularly from their arm areas when they grab onto big rounded trees. And so yes, they do, I suppose shed fur is maybe not the right word, but they do have a kind of cycle of fur that comes through, and they will most definitely groom a lot of their fur out. They've got that very rough tongue, and so they get rid of all those loose hair follicles, and then new hair then grows through, much like what we see on our heads. The interesting thing about them though is that their hair never gets too long, which is quite amazing to me, and I wonder if it's because they groom themselves so much. You'll find a leopard will groom probably 3-4 times a day, that maybe that's why the hair just never gets a chance to actually get too long, and they keep it nice and kind of short like this. Also, what you find is that in winter their coats seem to get almost slightly longer. It's almost as though when it gets colder that fur just thickens up a little bit and just helps to insulate them. Now in summer we tend to see that their coats, for me at least, I mean I don't know if this is scientifically proven, but for me it seems as though the coat fur gets a little shorter and they look a little bit more sheer in their pattern than when they have in winter, when it seems a little bit fluffier, particularly around the tummy area. You tend to see that it looks quite fluffy and thick in the winter months as opposed to summer. But how cool is that? It's not every day that we can do a full-on track of his entire body and look at every little spot in such detail like VM just showed us now. Absolutely wonderful way to spend an afternoon. We are so spoiled to be able to be in the presence of leopards like this, and to be able to sit and just to appreciate every little bit of them, and to be able to analyze every little single part of a leopard because of how relaxed they are is an absolute treat. And we really are all spoiled. All of you at home, myself and VM, we get so spoiled by having relaxed individuals like Hosana, and being able to lie at this distance from us that we can see all of that detail is just the most wonderful thing. But you can hear it's very quiet all of a sudden at the dam. So it sounds like things are just starting to change. It's that time of the day where the daylight animals are starting to slow down a bit, and the bird calls are not nearly as much as what we heard earlier. And so it's a little bit of a change in there, and I wonder if that's going to spark Hosana waking up. Now, nobody's special. You're asking if their claws retract or are they out permanently? Well, they're not out permanently, as you can see there. You can see no presence of claws, but their claws do not retract. All right, so retraction is a word that is used to pull something in. Now, their claws, as you can see, are not out at all. They actually push their claws out when they need them. So it's protraction of the claws, and they have a ligament that they have to flex, and that pushes the claw out of its sheath and then used. And the reason why they have protracting claws and not claws that are out all the time like a cheetah is because leopards and lions in particular have to have sharp claws in order to grab their prey items, and also because they don't run nearly as fast as the cheetah. The cheetah runs incredibly fast, and it needs some sort of traction and help and purchase when it's running at those speeds to be able to turn and keep its footing. And so those little claws then act like studs for those cheetah, like any of a football player or a soccer player or anything like that. They're able to then kind of grip the ground and be able to move at those fast speeds, whereas leopards don't need that. They need much sharper claws to be able to grab animals and grip on and then wrestle those animals to the ground. Cheetah, often you'll find, will actually either ankle tap an animal and send it tumbling over itself, or they will try and actually grab onto the animal with their sort of legs rather than just their paws. Whereas I've seen both lion and leopard when hunting, it's more just a kind of slap the paw and hope that the claws dig in and hold, and then the rest of the body comes round. And I actually watched the most incredible lion hunt. I know it's not a leopard, but the most incredible lion hunt in the Kalahari Desert, where a female chased a kudu, and this kudu kind of rounded through a thicket, and it didn't see a male lion that was busy feeding on a oryx or a gemsbok. And as that kudu then ran towards this male lion. He came running out of the bush alongside this kudu, and he slapped his paw right on this rump area of the kudu, and the claws dug in, and he basically one paw, should we say, one arm, held that kudu, a big male kudu now. I mean, that's a lot of weight, and he held it with his paw, and he managed to get the purchase, and those claws gripped, and he then was able to bring the other paw round and tackle that kudu to the ground and actually kill it. But it was just the most insane display of how well sharp claws work. Had his claws been out all the time and blunted, it was no ways he would have been able to grip that kudu and actually hold on for long enough to be able to topple the kudu over and actually kill it. So that's why they don't have those claws out like what you see with the cheetah. A little bit of a different way of hunting in terms of these guys. But there you can see a little flare of the sun coming over, which just adds to the beauty of the afternoon. And Hosana really has picked a perfect spot to be able to spend the afternoon. Right, well, as we've said before, we're going to sit with Hosana and we're going to enjoy the beauty of this afternoon. It really is a wonderful, special place to be. And while we do that, I believe Scott is admiring the beauty of the Masai Mara and is enjoying his bumble around the plains of East Africa. You can see little Hosana is starting to wake up, so we're starting to see the grooming process happening, a few yawns as well, those big white beautiful teeth, and now he's going to just go through slowly and meticulously, just going to groom off any little insects that might have gotten onto him, any loose little bits of fur like we were talking about earlier. Gonna lick his chops a little bit, watch us for a while, and then I think we're gonna see him maybe starting to move. There's something special though when you sit here and a leopard looks at you like that into the eyes. It really is quite an amazing feeling. But it seems as though this afternoon everything is starting to happen around us because, well, Hosana is now waking up and grooming. I've got a report just now that the wild dogs have just been spotted on Torchwood, and Tumba has also been seen crossing from Chitwa to Torchwood, not too far from Cheetah Cutline. So I wonder if he's not going to make his way on to Djuma in the next day or so. I really am looking forward to catching up with Tumba again. It has been far too little time with him, so I'm hoping that we're going to have a bumper day tomorrow. It seems like there's lots of things happening around us. And those of you who are the lion fans and have not heard much about lions, because I haven't spoken about them much recently, the Angama Pride, as far as I know, we're seen again on Elephant Plains this morning, but I'm absolutely flabbergasted how far they've gone. I spoke to one of the Elephant Plain guys, and he said to me last night they went all the way into Ottawa, which is basically Singita's northern section. And that is a long, long way away, and they were apparently chasing buffalo around that side. Not sure if any of us remember what a buffalo even looks like down here in Djuma, because it's been so long since we've seen them, but who knows, maybe the Angama Pride will hopefully come back in the next couple of days and move into our area. But you can see Hosana is definitely a lot more aware of what's going on. He's watching around, looking around, trying to see, is there any prey animals that are potentially moving towards this water source that he can then maybe hunt, and that's why he's looking. And if he yawns a lot like this could be a good indication that he's going to get up and start moving. So it's perfect time of the day for that. It's now the sun is just starting to set. It's just on the horizon at the moment, and I can tell you the temperature is absolutely perfect. So there you go, there's the sun just over the horizon. It's not quite on the horizon just yet. I would say maybe about 15 minutes away from sunset, and well, sun going just onto the horizon and starting to set. And so I think it's the perfect time to see a leopard moving. What worries me slightly though is he's looking south again, as though he wants to go towards Little Gari. So as long as if he does wake up he decides to carry on moving northwards and not back towards Little Gari, because we do have a school drive that's going to be joining us just now, and it's always so wonderful to be able to show the kids one of the most elusive big cats in the world and in Africa, the leopard. So I'm really hoping that Hosana decides just to groom himself a while longer, and if he does decide to move, to rather head northwards and not south back to Little Gari itself. But look at the size of that paw. The paw is absolutely massive. If you think about the size of his head, and you can see just how big that paw is in relation to his head. It really is quite large. Now, Kimmy, you were asking what type of diseases could leopards get? Well, they can get tuberculosis, so they can get TB, they can also get rabies, they can get feline AIDS, they can get... Oh, there's a big stretch, boy. Hello. And so those are the most common types of diseases that we see in the cats in this area. What's wrong? I don't think he really knows what to do. He's very intrigued by us today, and I'm not sure why. I wonder if maybe he's just, the smell of my petrol legs is confusing him slightly, and that's maybe why he keeps staring at me with this look, as to say, why do you smell so bad, and why are you so close to me? Sorry, Hosana, I will make sure. I didn't have time to shower before we came out, unfortunately. I'm not as well groomed as you are this afternoon, after you've just now cleaned yourself so nicely. There's a little bit of scratching going on. It's all a very lazy start to the afternoon by the looks of things, or to the evening, should I say. Why are you itching so much? Maybe he's got a little tick or something that's gotten onto the back of his neck, and that's why he keeps using his back legs. It is amazing, though, how supple they are, that they can use that back leg to basically scratch behind the head. It'd be quite nice. Imagine flicking your leg over the back of your head and just kind of scratching any itches that you have on your back. It would be fairly pleasant. I had a massive itch on my back yesterday that I would have really enjoyed having Hosana's capabilities. Are you going to go for a little drink? Right, VM, let me move you quickly. Oh no, you're going to lie down there now. He wants to rather just show and pose and show VM just how pretty he is by sitting right behind the vehicle, basically. He's no more than, I would say, at the moment from the edge of our car, maybe even, I would say, 10 feet from us, maybe even less, and he's completely relaxed. He kind of looks at us every now and then, but otherwise he's completely unperturbed. Shame, boy, is it itchy on the back of the head? I think we can all sympathize with that itch that you just can't reach. At least he seems to be able to get to it, and doesn't he look so content as he scratches? Stephen, yes, I would imagine that many people would be able to ID leopards from their necklace spots. Every single leopard will have different necklace spots, and I know that some of the viewers that tag me in some of their screenshots often do show spot patterns around the neck to newer viewers that are wondering how we ID them, and that's how a lot of the viewers will work out. Particularly in the Mara, I've seen a lot of those leopards, they've matched up the necklace pattern, and so yes, it is a very common tool, and it is unique in all leopards that they will have different sort of necklace spots, much like they have different spots around the face area. So yes, it is a good way to identify them. It's just not as easy to see as the sort of frontal area or the nose area. Right, VM, let me move you quickly so that we can see him if he is going to drink, because poor VM otherwise is going to be filming a aerial and not Hosana. Let's see, actually, Vildi, it might be quite nice like that. I think we're going to be in for a win here. VM, isn't that wonderful? That is absolutely beautiful. Look at that deep blue sky, that massive jackalberry in the background. Is that not picturesque? I think so. I don't know about you guys, but I think it's absolutely beautiful. And look at the reflection. You see the wind has died a little bit now, so there's a bit of a reflection that is coming through those ripples where his tongue is just kissing the surface of the water and using surface tension to bring up bits of water into the mouth. Now, what I always love about when a leopard drinks is the tail. Look at how the tail often curls up like that. It kind of has a life of its own while these cats are drinking, and it's my favorite thing is to watch leopard drinks. I don't know why. It's always been one of those things. It's a kind of, from when I was younger and before I started working as a guide, it was always that kind of ultimate image was to get a photograph of a leopard drinking kind of facing you, and so it's always such a thrill when I get to see these guys drinking. It makes me always very happy, and I've been spoilt in the last few months to see a lot of this at this dam in particular. I think I've seen most of our leopards drink here: Shadow, Tingana, Tandi, Tamba and Hosana, so I've been very fortunate in that regard. But you can see he'll probably drink for quite some time. It is a hot day today, and he would have lost quite a bit of moisture, so I'd imagine he is going to drink for a fair while. I don't think it's going to be a quick process for him. I think he's pretty much going to sit there and lap up as much water as possible and just try and get kind of some of that moisture back that he potentially lost while he was lying in the sun or walking around in the sun earlier, and when he was panting, he would have lost a lot of moisture through that. So I don't think he'll just drink for quite some time this afternoon. But isn't that absolutely wonderful? I think so. I think it's a beautiful way to spend an afternoon, especially when he looks at you like that. And you see he's got a few little scratches on the nose that I wonder if maybe Tingana gave him a little scratches. They don't look too fresh, so they're quite old. I think VM was telling me that the one major scratch on his nose there is from early days when he was still a youngster. So I wonder if maybe that wasn't given to him by Shogile and playing. Sometimes the playing does get a bit rough between the siblings. So I don't know if that was given to him by her or who gave it to him, but it's giving him a little bit of character. And of course, male leopards, by the time they get older, much like male lions, they end up with, big stretch, they end up with lots of scars and tatty ears and tatty faces, and that's all just part and parcel of being a dominant individual. But Hosana is doing an absolute treat for us because he's going the right direction, which is northwards and deeper into Djuma. Modern day Galileo, you're wondering if leopards' eyes change colour as they grow up. Oh, look at that. Isn't that great? Under that massive jackalberry tree, to see a leopard lounging out in the open is just so spectacular. We are super spoiled to live a life like this. Now, leopards' eye colours will change in terms of, as they get a little bit older, often their eye colour starts to get a little bit more subtle. So when I say subtle, if we think of somebody like, let's say Tiani, which is a leopard that we see in the West, when she was born, she had these bright sapphire blue eyes. But as time has gone on, so those eyes have lightened up, and they're more sort of a lightish blue color that you see right at the horizon of the sky when it's still got the sun up at this sort of time. So they've gotten still a blue tinge, but not quite as blue as what they were when they were older. And it's the same with a lot of leopards, is their eye color tends to just sort of soften a little bit, if that's the right word, not as vibrant and bright as when they're cubs. The thing is with Hosana is his eyes, for some reason, seem to just be getting almost brighter and more orange with time. So he seems to be getting a lot more sort of orangish color, and he's starting to look a little bit like a leopard that we used to see in this area known as Lamula, and so he's got that kind of same look. But this is also spectacular. So you've got sunrise over there, a few wispy clouds, Hosana underneath is just absolutely beautiful. And really, if you wanted to see a leopard, this is as good as you could ask for. There's not a single blade of grass, vegetation, anything in front of this individual, and he is right out in the open. It is fantastic, and like I say, just the best way to view a leopard, in my opinion at least. Obviously, so others will have differences of opinions, but for me, that's the best way to see a leopard, is out in the open like this, just relaxing and resting and completely at ease with its surroundings and us being in its surroundings. Now, every now and then you'll see him kind of turning his head, and why he's doing that is because there's a number of doves that are actually coming to drink from the water itself, and so that's why they're catching his attention every now and then. There's a little kind of flap down, and that's why he's looking. Right, now it is that time of the day where the schools are going to be joining us, so for all of our regular viewers, I hope you've had a good afternoon. You can continue to watch, remember, but we're just going to be taking questions from our schools instead, and it is a very, very, very warm welcome to the school that is joining us this afternoon. I believe it's the Avoca school that is joining us, and I hope that you guys are having a wonderful day at school and that you're going to continue to have a wonderful day. For those of you, my name is Tristan, and on camera today I do have VM the wildebeest, and behind me I have a spectacularly beautiful male leopard. Look at that, isn't that wonderful? He is one of the most beautiful individuals that we have out here, and we are so fortunate because he's lying right out in the open. He's lying as open as possible, and a leopard is normally a rare animal to find in Africa, so it's not an animal that we see that much. It likes to be shy, it likes to hide in thick, deep bush and brush, and yet this male is lying right out in the open. So we're so spoiled to be able to see this, and I hope that you guys are going to love every minute of the time that we get to spend with this male. Now remember, you can ask questions because we're live and we're interactive, so if you do have questions about this leopard, then just ask your teacher and she will send the questions through to us, and we'll try and get through as many as possible as we follow this male leopard as he goes about his evening business. It's the best time to be with him because he's now going to start waking up and start looking to go on the hunt, and so maybe he's going to go and see if he can find some impala, which are like deer. They're similar to a deer, and they are going to be around and starting to maybe come to this waterhole that we're at to come for an afternoon drink, and this male is in the best place to maybe hunt them. So it's a really good time to be with him. You can see at the moment he's just kind of watching around the water. There's a few birds that are fluttering about, that are drinking every now and then. Again, in fact, there's actually a dove right on the edge there. That's what he's busy watching, and that is called a laughing dove. And so leopards will sometimes hunt these doves and birds, but I'm sure this male wants something a little bit more substantial, big. Now, I'm not the only one out here. I've got a friend whose name is Taylor, and she's all the way about 3,000 miles north of me in the Masai Mara Game Reserve in the beautiful plains of East Africa, and she's got something very special to show you, and she wants to say hello. Well, as you can see, our male leopard has now moved a little bit. He's now come away from the dam itself. He's still itching a little bit. He's got a bit of a sore on the base of his right ear. It's not too bad, and I think the flies land there a lot and irritate him, and that's why he's scratching so much. But what I'm interested in is that he's looking quite a bit into the big tree that's above me, and that's because I think maybe he's trying to see if there's maybe food inside there that he could potentially go and get. So he might have maybe at one point put a carcass up there, because remember, leopards, when they kill their prey, will take it from the hyenas and other predators that we have out here. So it's very clever, and he's looking in case there is any food. Now, what he's doing at the moment is going to the toilet, so he's being a little bit of a typical cats, which is after they've slept, they often will then go and use the toilet, and they go and just defecate somewhere around here. And he's not a animal that has his own territory yet. And now when I say territory, I talk about basically an animal that has its own home, and he doesn't have that yet because he's still young. This male is only about 21 months old, so he's still too young to have a territory of his own. He's moving around in the territory that his mother has set up, and so for now he doesn't scent mark. So when he goes to the toilet like that, he's not going to scrape his back legs, he's not going to vocalize. You'll also see that he's not going to spray his urine on trees. He'll just go to and he'll urinate like what we just saw now. What we just saw now, he's kind of going to just wee on the edge of a road somewhere, but not scent mark properly. But I see he's now turning and going back the opposite way we just came from, so I don't know why he is. Jacob, a safari can be dangerous if you're not careful. So if you're in a situation where you get too close to the animals too quickly, then they can get a little bit upset. And these animals are very, very strong. They're made and designed to be able to survive out here. And there's lots of big animals like the elephants and the leopard and the lions, and they can be very dangerous. But the general rule is if you park quite far away and you let the animal come close to you, then generally it's okay and you won't have too many problems. So as long as you've got an experienced guide, or you've got somebody who's done a lot of training to be out here, then it's okay. It won't be too dangerous. But if you have somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, then yes, it can be very, very dangerous. And particularly with the bigger animals like elephants, they can be something that you have to worry about. Kiki, you're asking how we know if this leopard is a male or a female. Well, if you see underneath his tail there, and I know this is going to sound funny, but it's the easiest way to tell a male from a female, but a leopard has golden testes, and so that's a male that has his golden testes over there. Also, males are slightly bigger, and they have a much bigger chest and neck area, and you'll see if you look under his throat, you see he's got some skin that is hanging there. Now, that skin is called a dewlap, and so male leopards get a dewlap like that. Also, we know this male because we've been following him since he's been a young boy, and so we've gotten used to him. Now, you see he's busy smelling some dung there. Now, he's picked up the scent of some dung, and he's going to smell around and check what this is. Look, he's going to open his mouth, and you see he's got his whiskers up, and he's curling his mouth up. Now, that's called a phlegm grimace, and a phlegm grimace is a way that a leopard basically can tell what animal was here. So if that's another leopard, was it a male leopard, was it a female leopard, who was here before him? And he does that because he has an organ like our brain or our heart or something like that, that is in the roof of his mouth, and as he smells, that chemical goes in there, and his organ of Jacobson is able to analyze that and tell him it's a male or a female and what he needs to know about it. Isn't that crazy? I'm glad we as humans don't have to smell each other's poop to be able to know who we are. Now, I'm going to try and keep up with our male leopard as he walks around and negotiates his mother's territory, and while I do that, I believe Taylor's got some creepy crawlies in the plains of Africa. So You hear that? Now that's an impala, which is a type of antelope that is shouting at this leopard and warning everybody to tell them that we've seen a predator, be careful and stay away from this area. The impalas are running away now, so they've gone quite far. Look how he's lifting his tail. You see how he lifts his tail to be able to tell the impalas, I'm not hunting you. It's like a white flag to say, don't come near me, don't shout at me, keep quiet, I'm not trying to hunt you. And there he's stopping to watch the impalas. So I'm going to just try and turn so that we can see the impalas behind us, and that's what he's looking for. Is he's looking for animals like this that he can potentially hunt. Bryn, a leopard's prey is those guys over there. That's what they love to hunt the most here in the Sabi Sands, is those antelope that we call impalas, and they about the same size as your deer, maybe slightly smaller, and they'll target and they'll like to hunt things like this and then anything smaller. So they'll go after other types of antelope, scrub hares, which is like a rabbit, birds, lizards, even insects is what they'll go after. So a leopard has a very, very large amount of food items that it goes after. In fact, it's got the biggest array or amount of food out of any of the other big cats out here. So they will hunt anything, like I say, from insects all the way. What's he chasing? He's chasing something. They're going to try and keep up with him because he seems like he's spotted something. So I wonder what he's chasing. Maybe there was a squirrel or something like that. You'll find sometimes they go after squirrels. You can hear the birds are alarm calling now. His tail's in the air, telling all the birds, I'm not hunting you, stop shouting at me, I'm after something else. But he definitely spotted something and was chasing it. I wonder if he grabbed something. Now, Ryan, you want to know how fast a leopard can run? What's he? I think he's grabbed something. You see, he's got his head down. Under his paws, he's grabbed something. But it looks like maybe something like a squirrel or a little mouse or something like that is what he's going after. It's one of those. Started to settle down a bit after going and jumping and trying to catch something in amongst those sticks. He managed to miss, and he's now walked a little bit and is just resting before I think he'll carry on and try and hunt some more animals during the night. Now, you may have noticed that we're in black and white, and that's because we're in infrared. And there we go, he's back up and walking again. So what he's trying to do, it's quite an interesting way that he's hunting. Leopards sometimes will stalk animals and they'll try and ambush hunt them, which means that they'll try and get as close as possible before using an explosive speed to come out and then grab that animal. But what he's doing is he's walking and he's using his ears and his whiskers to be able to hear and pick up vibrations, and he's trying to find small animals. So like I was saying earlier, little mice and rodents, and maybe even things like the birds that we get in the grass here, like those guinea fowl that we heard calling earlier, or maybe button quails. That's what he's after, and so he's trying to flush those out and trying to catch them by doing that technique as opposed to actually stalking and hunting bigger animals. And we were just commenting, I wonder how many times he has to kind of do this and how much food he actually gets by doing this behavior. It's a very interesting way of going about hunting, and not the normal way that a leopard is, that's for sure. But you can see he's changed direction and he seems to have spotted something. What have you spotted, young man? He seems to have seen something. You can see he's just changed his direction all of a sudden, and he's now walking quite fast down towards a termite mound. Now, termite mounds out here in South Africa are some of the best. Top of the termite mound, you see he's going now. There he is, just behind the tree, and he's going to go up there, and he'll be able to then see a long way around and be able to see all the different animals that are here. You see, look, he's now stopped, but I think what I'm going to do is just try and get around so we can see him a little bit better, because he's a little bit far away for VM and for the infrared light. So I want to try and just get a little closer on my side. Let's see. nicely. Now, we are going through the bush, so I've got to be a bit careful to watch where I'm going so that we don't go down a big hole, because sometimes there's holes in the ground that is made by elephants and an animal called an aardvark and pangolins, and these are all animals that will dig into the earth's surface, and they can be a bit difficult if you want to try and drive around here. Maggie, you're asking if a baby leopard will hunt for food. So we're going to stop here for now because I don't want to get too far in front of him, because I know there's some impalas that are further down. But baby leopards, no, they don't hunt for food until they reach about, I would say, a year old is when they're really starting to hunt a lot. Before that, they wait for their mom to find food for them. So their mom will catch food and then come and call them. You might find from about 5-6 months that they start catching little lizards and chasing squirrels, and they might kill one or two, but they're not feeding themselves properly. They rely on their mom, and they need their moms in order to be able to find food. So coming. That's why our leopard maybe went onto a termite mound, because there's a hyena that's here as well. Look, there comes the hyena stalking in, looking around to see what's going on. And our male leopard is going to lie on top of his mound and watch that hyena coming past. And this hyena, the reason why it's here is it's probably heard the impalas shouting, and it knows when impalas shout that could mean that there's a food that it can steal from a leopard. Amit, you're asking what animal eats a leopard. Well, that's one that we just saw now. Hyenas are animals that will go after leopards and will try and kill them, particularly when leopards are young. But then you'll also find their biggest predator when they get older, and the size of this male will be something like a lion. So lions are very dangerous for leopards, but the hyenas, when they're babies and when they're cubs, will also go after leopard cubs and go after them. But look at how this male is watching. Isn't that beautiful? You see how he's looking at that hyena. He's focused because he knows the hyena can be dangerous to him, and so he's watching to make sure once the hyena goes that he can then go away, and also to keep the hyena in view so that if the hyena comes, doesn't catch him unawares or catch him by surprise and then able to chase him. You see how he's watching? The hyena is slowly but surely kind of circling in and getting closer and closer, and hyenas have very good eyesight and sense of hearing. And that's why that hyena is able to work out where this leopard is, and it's looking around. It's trying to see, did a leopard catch a food item? You see it's looking in some of the trees. It's just checking to see that there isn't something here that it can steal from our leopard male. But obviously we know that our leopard male doesn't have any food, but he's still watching from the top of his perch just to make sure that the hyena doesn't get anywhere near him. How exciting is this? We're being absolutely spoiled by our male leopard. He's doing everything for you. He's hunting, he's watching hyenas, he's doing all these kind of things, which are generally not that common to see. We don't see this all the time, so it's amazing to witness this and to see it happening all the way from South Africa. And you see, look how he's turned his head the whole way with the hyena. As the hyena's moving around, so our leopard is also turning just to watch. And well, leopards are very opportunistic, so they will hunt at any time of the day. Most of their activity in terms of hunting is at night, so they will hunt mostly around sort of just after sunset, just before sunrise, and a little bit into the night, particularly if we have a storm or something like that at night. But they can hunt during the day as well. I've seen leopards hunting middle of the day, in the morning, the afternoon. So any time that there's an opportunity to hunt, they will do it. They will take that opportunity and try and grab it with both hands, because out here, it's very hard to catch animals. These prey animals have all got good sense of hearing, good eyesight, good sense of smell, and a leopard only probably catches 3 animals out of every 10 times he hunts, and so that makes it every time they can get an opportunity that they need to and try and hunt as effectively as possible, and that means both day and night. But they will prefer to hunt at this time of the day and into the evenings. It's a lot cooler, and the eyesight is much better than what ours is, and so that means that at night they're able to see animals much better than what the other animals can see, and so the advantage lies with them at night, and that's why most of their activity is at night. But you can see he's a little bit hot, he's panting, so his mouth is open, And he's panting like that to try and cool himself down. We've had a very warm day here in South Africa. It's been about 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's been hot. And so for this leopard with a fur coat, he needs a way of trying to cool himself down. And how he does that is open his mouth and pants. And what happens is that as he's exhaling hot air, it's causing evaporation. So evaporation is the process where water turns, or basically from water, a liquid form, into a gas form, and that process actually causes cooling. And so his tongue then gets cooler, and the blood in his tongue cools his body down, and that's how he can deal with the hot weather we have here in South Africa. In terms of how many leopards or cubs leopards will have, you'll find a female in South Africa will have on average between 1 and 3. So 2 is normally what we see, but 1 or 3 is 3 of the most, and 1 being the least, obviously. And then if in some parts of Africa there has even been recorded cases of 4, but I have never heard of that. You see, look, he's just twitched around. I wonder if that hyena is coming closer. Yes, the hyenas, I think, spotted him and is coming towards this area. It's just over there, and it's slowly but surely heading in our direction. I don't know if you can see it. It's just got its head down in the grass. There it is. So it's slowly but surely heading here. You see it's sniffing. That's where the leopard came from. So it's smelling that there was a leopard here, and now it might come walking towards this termite mound. That's why the leopard has stood up. It wants to watch and make sure that this hyena doesn't catch it unawares and get hold of it and hurt it in any way. And so that's why it's watching the hyena from this termite mound. As soon as the hyena comes this way, you might find the leopard will run. It might even run up a tree for safety, because the hyenas can't climb like the leopards can. Well, hun, the leopards, as we were saying earlier, will run at about 30 miles an hour. So that's about as fast as a leopard can go. Maybe a little bit less, 28 to 30 miles an hour. So it's not the fastest animal out here. The cheetah is much faster. Even lions are faster than them. But how a leopard catches its food is not by speed. It catches it by camouflage or ambush, and so it will sit in areas like this and it blends really, really well, and then the animal walks really close to that leopard, and it's got a lot of power to explode out and a lot of speed off the starting block, so to speak. But once they've started getting into their stride, look, he's actually stalking the hyena itself. He's gone round to watch that hyena, and you can just see the tip of his tail hanging up over the top there. So I'm going to go round a little bit because I don't want to miss the action if the hyena spots the leopard and goes a little bit closer. Now I need to be a bit careful because there's lots of stumps here and I don't want to damage our car. The hyena is actually running off now, so I don't know if our leopard chased our hyena, but I think the leopard's still on top. Yes, the leopard's still here, so I don't know why the hyena ran away. Maybe something kind of caught its eye and it went running that way. Maybe it's heard another alarm call. You can see our leopard is still sitting here and still watching, and is probably just as curious as to why the hyena ran away. You see, it's watching. The hyena ran that distance, or that direction, so our leopard is still very alert and is watching as much as possible, just so that it can see what's happening. Maybe there's a chance even for the leopard to sometimes scavenge from hyenas. Even though hyenas scavenge a lot more from leopards than what leopards will from hyenas, there is sometimes a chance. And you see, he's trotting after the hyenas now. He's going to go and investigate and see what's going on. And back the same way we've just come. Interesting behavior. Now, normally you wouldn't see this from a leopard. Normally a leopard would try and go away, but this is a young male and he's quite brazen, and so he's been trying to steal food from a number of females, and maybe he thinks that this hyena has spotted some food and he's going to go and investigate himself in case there's an opportunity that he can steal from another leopard himself. All very complicated, but it works out here, and these animals are able to figure it out, and it's how he's able to get food without having to use too much energy. But he's slowly disappearing, and so I'm going to try and keep up with him in this long grass and these thick areas. I've got to be, like I say, careful. There's lots of stumps and thorn trees and other things that can burst my tires, so I have to just be a little bit aware of where I'm driving and check and take it a little bit slower. Now, I'll try and keep an eye on the male leopard. It's getting dark here, as you can see by me having lights on, so I'm going to try and get us one last view, because unfortunately we're getting to that time of the day where we're getting to the end of our safari, so let's try and just catch up with our leopard one last time. Here he is. He's still in front of me and he's still trotting. I wonder why he's now starting to trot. I think maybe he's heard something as well and is moving in this direction. I wonder if there's not something else going on. Let's see. I'm just going to get around this corner and we're going to try and see if we can get one last view of our leopard as he strolls off into the night, because like I was saying just now, unfortunately it is that time where our safari is coming to a close. But I hope all of you have absolutely loved it and you've enjoyed seeing the beauty of the leopard and African wildlife in the Mara and here in South Africa. And I hope that all of you will have a wonderful day at school today and for the rest of your day, and I hope that there's not too much homework when you go home this afternoon. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep up with that leopard any further. He's trotting quite a bit and he's going into really dense thicket, so I think we're going to unfortunately lose visual of him. But it's been an absolute pleasure, like I say, and so from Taylor, myself and Scott, I hope you have a wonderful day and we'll see you on the